hosting some amazing candidates running for Minneapolis politically. Oh my God, I'm excited about this. I am going to give them a chance to introduce themselves, which I have Jamal Osman, Yusra Arab, and Abdirizak Bihi. Welcome, guys. It's an honor to have you guys at Dose of Reality. So let's go and introduce yourself. Jamal, you want to start for me?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Shukri, for hosting us. My name is Jamal Osman. I am a Minneapolis Council member in Ward 6. I was elected about 12 months ago in a special election. I came in a very tough time in the middle of the civil unrest, the killing of George Floyd, and many challenges that was facing our city. And as we all know, the COVID had a huge impact in our community in Minneapolis. But I had to show leadership in that, and really represent my city. When the council was divided, I had to come and make sure that I am on the side of the residents. So right now, feels like deja vu. I was just knocking doors yesterday, and I'm knocking doors today for re-election. So I'm hoping to get back within, I think, less than maybe 8 days left before the election. So.
Well, welcome again,
Thank
Jamal.
you.
It's an honor. Yusra, welcome to Dose of Reality. This is your first time here, you and Jamal.
Yeah.
I think I had Bihi before
yes.
for education. Welcome to Dose of Reality. Please introduce yourself a little bit. We want to know about your background.
Sure. Thank you for having us here. Shukri, I want to thank you for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to interact with our future constituents and current ones as well.
Yes.
My name is Yusra Arab. I'm a mother. I live in the Southeast Colwell neighborhood, and I am now running to represent Ward 2 in the Minneapolis City Council.
Welcome again, Yusra. Abdirizak Bihi, welcome to Dose of Reality the second time.
Yes, I am so glad. In a different environment, though.
Yes.
Yeah, I miss the old MTN studios. My name is Abdirizak Bihi, and I am running for Ward 6. I've been working and living in Ward 6 for the past 24 years. I have done so many issues in the community, including youth employment. Currently, that's what I focus, bringing jobs and also trainings, skills of trainings. I've worked on public safety, I've worked on homelessness, I've worked on affordable housing. I've been an advocate with state legislatures, city councils, county commissioners. We are in a time, an unprecedented time, that we have the biggest challenges facing our city and our Ward 6. And it's time to make real change for our community. Racial inequity is number one. Social inequity in education, in wealth building, in jobs, in housing. As you can see around the city, everywhere you look at, there are tents being removed. We need to build more affordable housing and low-income housing. I am an advocate for public housing units to stay within Minneapolis public housing, not to be privatized for corporate landlords. So that's the kind of change I'm hoping to see in City Council in this election.
Sounds great. Thank you for introducing yourself and going over a little bit of your background of what you need to get done. So I'm going to go to the fun part, which are the questions, where I'm going to have these great candidates go over what they're going to change in our community, which I'm excited to look for those changes. Jamal, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Jamal, what services do you have planned for us in upcoming years, since you're already in the city of, you're representing us already?
Yes, of course. In our community, there's so many challenges that we're already facing. I think the main thing that if you walk to the street of Cedar Riverside, it's youth. Our youth are dealing with all kind of difficulties, and unemployment youth is sky high, and also the opioid and drug addiction. So providing services is very important. I think it's time for our city to take the lead to make sure the health department and those folks that are invested in the community are providing services and really helping the youth. When I got here, I think I told my colleagues in the city hall that we have been pandemic before the pandemic, which is our youth had been on the streets and lack of resource. And when we have institutions like Oxford College, University of Minnesota, that are leading the COVID vaccination research. But over here in the backyard, we have a youth that are dying because of that. So those have been my main issue, and I think that so far I have started great. We were able to accomplish to bring those Sherman Associates and other institutions I mentioned with the city health department to create a plan.
Okay.
And one of the steps we took is to open a clinic for outreach to help the youth get services they need, talk to the folks that they can speak to their language and so on, and also bring services within the city. One of the services we brought in Cedar Riverside was a crime prevention program, having peer specialist employees and individuals that are coming from the masjid or the soccer coaches and so on, coming in, putting yellow shirts, walking around the street, talking to the kids and saying, hey, do you need help today? Do you need a bed? Is there anything we can help you? So that the main thing was youth. Of course, homelessness, as you can imagine.
Yes.
Lack of housing, lack of opportunity in here, and economic development is onto that too. And keep changing the safety. Safety has been biggest challenge in Ward 6, and our community, we all got here somehow because our country being unstable somehow, and people want to feel safe in their home. Moms and the kids want to feel safe in home. Safety, youth, and also bringing more housing.
So you think you have improved a little bit of those issues as you've been serving our community and society?
Yes, I have. I believe that as someone who has worked in the youth and also as a mental health trainer who has worked people that are dealing with mental health and stuff, I was able to talk to my colleagues and put actually money behind that. We put a lot of money through that $1.5 million through youth services and so on in the city, and also bringing more housing here, bringing more development here. I think we have about 6 housing that will come up in Ward 6 in next year and a half, and mainly it's going to be 3 or 4 bedroom units. As you know, we have a large family here. So
Great. Thank you for answering that. Yusra, this is your question.
Sure.
What motivated you to run for the office as a mother and being on a busy schedule? Tell me a little bit about that.
It hasn't been easy. Running a campaign is very hard and exhausting, and I probably look exhausted right now.
I know you look beautiful.
Thank you. You're too kind. I previously worked at City Hall, and seeing some of the things that get prioritized at the city, right, behind closed doors, is what honestly led me to run and be an extension of my community at City Hall, making sure that people that look like me are part of the decision-making table. I have extensive experience at City Hall. I have relationships with department heads and so forth and so on. So it's not going to be starting from the bottom up. I'm well acquainted with what goes on. For me right now, we have an incumbent who's been in office for 16 years. We're not any better off today than we were 16 years ago. And I honestly think it's time for true representation, right? That reflects the diversity of our communities. So that is really why.
Thank you. Women power. Bihi, I've grown up knowing that you are a community activist and do a lot of things in our community. What changed your mind to run for the office?
Thank you very much. It's been a great ride of all those years working with the community. Yes, having, living within the community in those high rises, you get to see the challenges every day and every night. And some people cut and loose and run. Some people just stop by in the daytime. Some people live there and raise their families and have their kids there and never run and work with the people and stay with the people. Yes, the challenges are growing, and right now we are seeing more young people addicted to opioids. And recently, last 8-9 months, it has gone crazy. I can tell you, here are our stairways full of COVID things. People are afraid to use that. See the young people sleeping, overdosing right in our stairs, and we can't even use our stairs. We have layers and layers of parking ramp. In the cold, people rent the basement where the heat is, especially mothers, single moms. To be safe and to have their car ready. They can't go there. They're parking on the top of the stairs because they're afraid Every night we have to call the ambulances. We have to call the ambulances. This is the remaining.
Valerie, you want to zoom?
Yeah, this is the opioid thing. This is the opioid thing that is really, see, full of our stairs. I can give you a tour. It has gotten worse with our community. No help at all. We hear superficial resources that never, ever come to our community. And see, the Riverside is not alone. It's all over Ward 6 and city of Minneapolis. You go to Seward, you see the crime caused by drugs and addiction. You go to Elliott, you go to Phillips. It's really things that some people are scared of and run, and some people like me are encouraged that we can engage each other, that we can talk to each other, and focus on what the issues are. You know, and that's those are one of the things that really make me run for this office. And the other thing is, I'm a father. I have 2 daughters here who live with me and were born in Cedar Riverside. One goes to UFM for 2nd year, and one goes to South High as tradition. They use the transit system. They used to. Now they cannot. We have to pick them up because people are sleeping on the transit system because they don't have a home to go to. I have seen families, daughters like mine, sleeping in a tent. That calls us morally and emotionally and physically to get involved. And we need to change the city council that is completely controlled by downtown and corporations. We want people voices to go to the city hall, not vice versa. We want people, neighbor organizations, who know and deal with this. People like me who live within these folks, who know what the issues are. The community knows what the issues are and what the solutions are. So we need a voice at downtown, not a voice coming from downtown and dictating to us. We need to empower people in Ward 6.
So you believe, as being here around this community, you can make those changes that you are seeing?
I believe I cannot alone make that change. I need colleagues at City Council. I need to use my 24 years of experience of building relationships. I need those relationships, not only from the city. I need to build that relationship with our commissioner, Hennepin County commissioners, especially Commissioner Angela Conley. I need Mohammed Noor, who represents our ward. I need Kerry Diziak. I need all our representatives. I need Ilhan Omar at the federal level. We need all of us to come together and get those resources and help our neighbors.
Great, thank you. All right, Jamal, as a city councilor already right now in Ward 6, you've heard what's happening. Have you noticed those things happening? Have you been around the community to look into that?
Yes, of course I have. This is my community. This is what I work at.
That's correct.
And before I came here, I was involved with the youth, and I have seen the challenges.
Yes.
But here we can sit around and either complain and wait the government's help,
That's right.
or we can, I actually blame our community. I blame the fathers. I have blamed the community that are, these kids need mentorship.
Okay.
They need assistance. They need individuals that we need to take responsibility as a community.
That's right.
We can wait magically the government to save us, right? One thing we can do as an elected official is fight for resources and bring those resources.
Yes.
One of the things right now, I'll give you an example, is that $250,000 program that I brought it here in the community. And 10 organizations bid on it to do the work.
Okay.
None of them were Somali. So actually I had to talk to the city and make sure that we want culturally specific programs in our community.
Yes.
So I think that we can get as much resources as we can and fight for the resources, but at the end of the day, our kids need us. They need the moms, they need the fathers to be a father figure,
So
they need the community.
So you believe responsibility and the exact characters come from our parents and leading these kids to the right path.
Yes.
And you are supporting by giving the services
By
to the
giving
young
the
individuals.
services. We can bring as much resource, as much a dollar amount and see the Riverside, but if we're not doing the work, if we're not really giving the us our responsibility. I'm going to give you one example.
That's right.
I ran a youth program. I had about 40 kids, 17 volunteers in Phillips West neighborhood. None of them were East African community.
Okay.
We have white Caucasian workers students and people that work in downtown getting on their bikes to come help our kids when we are at the Starbucks, you know, laughing about politics that in Somali that really doesn't affect our kids here.
Exactly.
So responsibility, personal responsibility is very important, and also fighting for resources and shining the light that we have a problem here in our community.
Yes.
Is also important.
Thank you so much for clearing that. Yusra, I have a question for you. If elected, what 2 steps would you take to put our city on a firmer financial footing for our community? Tell me a little bit about
the East African community in general, just our economy is in general.
Economy.
Okay, so right now, as most of you guys are aware, we had 2 major issues. So we had the global pandemic that deeply affected our revenues and our economy. And then on top of that, we had the horrendous murder of George Floyd and the subsequent civil unrest. So that in itself also destroyed the majority of our business corridors, especially our minority-owned business corridors. I was in the city when half of Lake Street burned down, and the half that burned down was predominantly people of color, which is quite unfortunate. And at the same time, even though Lake Street isn't necessarily Ward 6 is where I was responsible for, the individuals who owned business along that corridor had no one else to turn to. I would literally get phone calls from around the city to asking for help when there's actual council members who represent that area. And unfortunately, those council members didn't step up to the plate. So some of them were actually being asked to still pay property tax when their entire building burned down, which is insane. So I do think that we didn't work hard enough to provide capital. I was part of a coalition put together by the current mayor. It was called Community Forward, Minneapolis Forward Now Coalition. It brought together organizations on the ground, especially BIPOC organizations and economic development organizations, to come up with a set of requirements and recommendations so that the city can partner up with the private sector, which we should always do. We do have many Fortune 500 companies located in Minnesota. And they were looking for these recommendations to put money aside so that the city then can distribute as aid to these businesses. I also think with the ARP money we just got from the federal, the American Rescue Plan, we should dedicate some of those funds to these BIPOC-owned businesses so that they can come back and Lake Street can still be a corridor of you know, international corridor. We value Lake Street, so we want to have those businesses stay there, but build back and then build back more resilient. I also believe in pushing for home ownership, especially in our BIPOC community. We heavily focus on renting. We push renting, which is a good thing for those of us who are not ready to buy a home, but we should deeply look into promotion of home ownership. That's how you build wealth. That's how you build generational wealth. That's how you help your kids in the future, right? That's the American dream. So we should prioritize that. We should also prioritize helping small entrepreneurs within our communities, providing assistance, technical assistance, making sure that they have the resources and that they can navigate the bureaucracy at City Hall. Because majority of our businesses have no clue how to go to these different departments. When you do business with the city, you literally jump through loopholes. And the most a good point of it is Speak Now Minneapolis, that bid on the MTN. She told me she went through hell just to get that. And that is somebody who's well acquainted, knows the system, speaks the language. What do you expect is going to happen if one of our business owners tries to navigate that? It is absolutely horrendous. The city does not do well with communicating with minority groups, right? And that's what they need to do. They need to realize, how can we communicate with the East African community? We're orally traditional community, right? So you can have 1,000 flyers, not a single person's going to show up. You make a 2-minute video, I guarantee you half the community is going to come up. So we need to be able to keep up with these communities and understand how can we provide resources and information, and that is truly how we navigate out of this issue.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Bihi, what are your plans for our community that you are looking to emphasize the change or add to it?
Change to what?
To anything that you need to add to our community.
There are so many.
What's your plan?
Yeah, my plan
Your
is
vision.
Ward 6 is the most diverse ward in our city. And that should not be a burden, but it should be a blessing. We need to bring people together. We need to create that space. we need to stop bringing policies and ordinances and legislative work from downtown of Minneapolis, from City Hall, to say, you poor people, you immigrants, don't know what you are ailing you. Here is your solution. First of all, we need to stop that.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do about that is to bring neighborhood organizations that are really the key gatekeepers of these communities. Bring them together because they engage the communities on a daily basis.
Okay.
Use that tool and that vehicle to get to the community. Have a town hall meetings. Talk about the challenges and also ask what people think of the solutions. Don't force solutions that don't work on them.
Okay.
In that setting, we will be able to really find and hear from community what the issues are. So much things that we think about our youth programs don't work. Ask Brian Coyle Community Center.
Yes.
Ask Phillips Community Center. Ask all those community centers who work with young people what they need. For example, years ago,
Yes.
we had funding at Brian Coyle Community Center. We had a youth programming. We had basketball tournaments. We had after-school programs. We've got one of the 6 best digital room in Brian Coyle provided by Best Buy in the whole nation, 6 of them. We need to put the dollars to bring people there. Right now, there's no single dollar about youth programming.
Billy, I'm gonna hold you right there. When you say bring people, who are we bringing?
We are
Specifically?
bringing people, university students,
Okay.
Somali American Association students there,
Okay.
other students from Oxford, UFM. Bring them to volunteer there. Bring the dollar resources to have those programs on.
Okay.
And you look at that big building, the only building in that high-rises neighborhood, highly dense. We have the highest number of youth per density of land in the whole state, if not in the Midwest.
Yes.
And we have the least amount of resource, 0. The building is closed. The young people are doing opioids, as you have seen it. When that building or the gym or the buildings in Phillips or in all over Ward 6 or in our city, when you see those who are fortunate that they are funded like the rest of the city, you will find 0 young people doing drugs right in front of you. You see the minimum of crime. You see the success of young people finishing high school, going to college. We have seen that in the past in our communities.
Yes.
We are not seeing right now, and that's what we need to change.
Do you changes of the youth? Do you think that comes from home, as Jamal has mentioned, that it depends with the parents what they install in their kids?
You know, fathers and mothers are important, the number one importance of shaping the young people's
That's
future.
correct. Yeah.
But you have to look at some families. We have a great number of single mom households. We have who are immigrants, and sometimes who have the barriers of culture and language. Sometimes they have to work 3 jobs to pay the rent. They might not have access to programs. I have neighbors that would send their children with me to the Brian Coyle to do after-school programs, and later call me to pick them up and hold them in my apartment until they come home. We need to have empathy and sympathy for working class single mom families. And that's a huge number of my neighbors. I don't blame them. I need to get the support they need. I need the daycare, the daycare resources. I need that to work with the state and the federal government to have the dollars to support the working families in terms of daycare, in terms of having funding at the neighbor organizations to support them. But we cannot support them. Yes, there are fathers like me that sit on the coffee shop and don't help the family, and they're not just a few of them. The whole community is really working so hard. I know in my building and many buildings I work with and many families I work with, the dad and mom both are working, but they're struggling to have their kids in. If you take your kid to after-school program, private program, I did before, it's going to cost you $600 a month. Who can pay that? We need those resources to bring to the community. in order, and that's important in our public safety.
Okay.
If we want to have a public safety that is not dependent on policing, we need to invest in the community. We need to invest in our neighbor organizations, who are the gatekeepers. Why do I keep saying neighbor organizations?
Yeah.
We have one example here.
Yeah.
COVID, when the COVID started, the county and the state and the feds were struggling, and the city. How do we approach this? How do we fight this?
Yeah.
Somehow they ended up using neighbor organizations to distribute masks, to do vaccinations, to engage in food distribution, and that's how we become successful.
That's right.
And we need to use that model to go through neighbor organizations in order to better our communities. I don't think our working single mom families deserve a blame. I believe they deserve a support. And I think that's one of the things I'm going to work with. And that's across the board in North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna start asking questions that will involve all of you guys. We want to hear answers from each of you prospectively of how you will approach the situations, how you will make these changes in our community. How do you feel about transportation option currently available in our city? Jamal, you want to go ahead and start?
Yes, I think transportation it's an essential thing that our community needs, especially here. The great thing about Minneapolis right now is that we have the light rail train and the buses, but increasing that is definitely something that the city can invest. And right now, I think 2024, there will be a light rail train that will go through Lake Street from St. Paul all the way to uptown. So that's a great thing to look and think that. One of the challenges that I've been dealing with, and the office has been dealing with, is the safety concern with the riders that people are over there. Purse being snatched, and kids, folks that are getting off work, dealing with that kind of thing, crimes. And one of the things I did is just I built a great relationship with the 3rd precinct, 1st precinct, inspectors and officers that are there, and also Metro Transit.
Yes.
We meet with them regularly to make sure that we are keeping the residents safe.
Okay.
So, we'll continue improving the transportation.
Yusra, what do you think about that?
I think compared to bigger cities,
Yes.
our transportation isn't up to par yet, right?
Okay.
And I think we do have sufficient, like Jamal said, we have the light rail that came a couple of years back, but we need to make it more efficient and more accessible, right? Especially for communities of color that use it more often than others, right? And we need to make sure to look into, well, how can we help out with with the fee as well.
That's right.
I think Kansas City or somewhere in the Midwest has a pilot where it's free to ride public transportation. We need to look into that because that would motivate and encourage others to use it, and that would work towards reaching our environmental goals as well, right?
Okay.
And working with the Met Council to make sure that it's more efficient. It's we have rapid buses in main corridors to get to where you need to get to, so you're not late to your work. And like I said, make it more efficient. Make it, hopefully, work towards making it more electric, so we can meet some of our goals as a city, but also making it more accessible and affordable for our most vulnerable members.
Yeah. Thank you. And you, Bill?
Transportation, one of my favorite. Long time ago, I did work with former Commissioner, Hennepin County Commissioner Peter McLaughlin. And one day I noticed there was a sign on the public housing 630 building a long time ago that were 2 months old, that were inviting the community to talk about having a station at Cedar Riverside Station. Then I followed on that, and the meeting already happened, but none of our community members attended because it was in English.
Okay.
Few non-Somali attended, and they were not public housing residents too. They were residents who were homeowners. And they talked about their only concern, which is legitimate, that is the train. They said no to the train because they were afraid the train might bring bad people, and that might increase crime in the neighborhood and then devalue their properties. Everyone should be worried about that. But what was missing is all the residents being invited. And I called Commissioner Peter McLaughlin back then, and Sally Pelton, who was the first black and female mayor of our city. I had the opportunity to work with them. Then I invited them to redo that meeting and include everyone who doesn't speak English or speak English. I co-organized it, and we turned in 711 people. 700 people said, yes, we need the train, because they are working class. The parking is almost nil. And so those working mothers, especially who work on janitorial jobs and work in offices, needed a train station that's a transportation system that's safe. And it worked. I am glad I worked there, because my daughter used that before the COVID. My kids used that to go to school. I used that to go to work, and also my wife and I used that to go everywhere we want to go, like many other my neighbors. Then we fought for second station that University of Minnesota wanted to have it inside. It took us 2 years of negotiations that we get that closer to West Bank. So Cedar Riverside and West Bank stations.
And there is a train there.
Then we have 2 train stations in that neighborhood. The buses, I partnered with Metro Transit voluntarily, no dollars. I volunteered with them to hire East African drivers and operators. If you go to Minneapolis and every 3 buses that pass by you, you will notice an East African immigrant female with hijab and a male that drive in our transportation system. Our transportation, as my sister here, Yusra, said, well, yes, it's not up to par, but it's really getting there. The other part that's missing is biking. I bike. So I remember when the elders would go like, what are you doing? You're an adult. Why are you biking like a kid? So I had to do a lot of education, get elders to bike, teach them, get our East African women and partner with other organizations to cycle something, to teach our East African women, those who don't know how to bike. That's also equity part. I also partnered with Alina, and I did bike distribution in 2017, 2018, and 2019. We had kids showing up. The bike distribution starts at 9 o'clock at Brian Coyle every year, every summer. We had kids lining up for 3:14 a.m. Just to get a bike. So it's not about the community not wanting resources. It's about the resources. Yes, I want to say thank you to Alina. I want to say thank you to Freewheel. I want to say thank you to Mill District, Claudia Kita, and also Coach Weber and all the community partners who really make this thing happen every year. Public transportation is the key to our climate change. We need to really enforce those policies, 2040 policies, city plan. We need to really be careful about not only building those infrastructure, but we have to be keen and eager and aware of including our BIPOC communities and immigrant communities to be part of that equity of having access to clean transportation.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, this is getting interesting. I am excited about a lot of changes and the ideas that our candidates have. Inshallah, we are hoping for these changes to really be active in our community. What are your top priorities for small businesses if elected? Because we had a lot of issue for the last 2 years, especially with the COVID hitting. There was so much going on. Tell us a little bit of what you will have done for them. You will do.
Yeah, I think our businesses, especially local businesses on Lake Street and Franklin, have been really affected. Not just the COVID, but also the civil unrest. And we became a place that the elected officials, like the governor, come and just take a photo op thing and talk, say, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They haven't been rebuilt. I spoke to money business on Lake Street and Franklin, and all these promises that was made, no one ever reached out to them. And as I got there, make sure that we are really talking to the business owners themselves and connecting them to the city resources. One thing we have to do, we have to put money behind it. We have to be able to help them rebuild. We have to give them a relief for a tax break and so on. And the city of Minneapolis, I remember the cleanup. We passed $2 million on Lake Street, and 15 businesses is the one we selected. to get that money. And now the businesses are no longer there. The building doesn't exist. So I have to personally find those people and ask Abdi or Halima to see, do you know so-and-so, a restaurant so-and-so, the individual is, and get them those resources. So, we need a lot of help within the businesses that have been affected. And, it's all about really talking to the county and the state, and also putting city resources within that. And we have done that, and we'll continue to support. There are, of course, organizations, and I'll call it out, organizations that really get grants and stuff like that, but they don't reach out to the small shops that the moms and families owned. And when I talk to them, they say, well, no one ever reached out to us. Here on Lake Street, I had a meeting with the Latino and East African businesses on there that have been burned down on Lake Street with Councilmember Kanu that was over there. And none of them say no one reached out to us. So we have to hold accountable those organizations that we are contracting to give away money.
Okay. Yusra, what's on your thought on that?
In terms of helping small businesses, I think I touched on it earlier a little bit, and he's absolutely right. We need to also have organizations from within our own communities, like development organizations. But even going far beyond that, even starting up a business, we need to be able to, as a city, help from the establishment of a business all the way into making revenue and improving your business and sustaining it, right? Majority of the business contracts and the licensing and the coding, the city does. And like I said earlier, we when I was at City Hall, we were able to, because the need was so dire and there was no resources or assistance available, we put together an annual business forum. And what we did was, it was a one-stop shop for almost everybody. So you would get there, it would be held once a year, and it would be a one-stop shop from how to get a business proposal done, who to contact, what are the zoning laws, basically everything you need to start a business and maintain it, but also adding funding as well, making sure that we can provide down payment assistance and other variations of capital assistance. And then we also have a small business team at the city, but it's staffed. I think there's like 4 or 5 people who staff it, as a city this large. And fortunately, we have one of the most phenomenal employees of the city, Suada Abdi. I'm going to give her a shout out. She's phenomenal. She works super hard to make sure that our most vulnerable community members know the resources, how to attain it, and where to go. But she's only one person, right? So we need to be able to provide these communities with navigation centers. We need to provide them with assistance on how to navigate financial literacy. How can you get a loan? How do you maintain it? How do you not default on it? How do you start a business? Every step of the way. The city doesn't do it, I already told you. It does it to a certain extent, but they make business with the same group of people. Procurement typically allocates funding for the same organizations because they themselves don't want to go through the loopholes of dealing with somebody who's new, who doesn't understand the nuances around it. So we need to be able to contract with businesses of color, because we have equity ratio of, if you bid on something, you have women, black, there's different categories, right? But just going far beyond that, by actually engaging the community and letting them know what the resources are, like I said, it's very hard to navigate. We need a navigator of some kind in different, and we can house them at these organizations like African Development, New American Development. We can house them there, and we can fund it, and it can be in part of those organizations, but they would solely exist to help small businesses and people of color owned businesses getting capital assistance, technical assistance, financial literacy. So there's a list of priorities. And one more thing, I hate to cut you off, but as an elected official at the city, you can use the pulpit to work with jurisdictional partners. You can work with the county to step up and actually invest money into these communities. You can advocate at the legislature to make sure that certain bills are passed and we allocate funding to rebuild our business corridors. So you're there. You can partner up with so many different organizations and elected officials to bring the resources that are needed. Yeah.
Do you think our community,
Yeah.
as a Somali community
Yeah.
and immigrants, are going through some very difficult time navigating all those information you just?
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was already hard enough doing it
Yes.
pre-COVID and the civil unrest. You
Yes.
can only imagine how damaging that is. I remember when the city allocated funds for small businesses during the COVID, and they required businesses to be shut down. But most of these small business owners, especially in like Somali malls, were still required to pay rent. Me and Suada were working to just make sure that they're not left behind, because there was an application processing, there was things that you had to go through.
Yes.
My mom owned a store at the 24 for 5 years back in the day.
Okay.
I know damn well my mom wouldn't be able to apply for any of these resources. So we had to make sure we bring in community leaders and make sure that they were part of the process, so they can go to them and they would fill out and keep track of the process. So there are so many layers of need in place. Yeah.
You guys are willing to imply that to the community as you are
Absolutely.
elected and
Absolutely.
support our community, and that's the reason why we need our people to support those who are vulnerable
Exactly.
and unable to access these amazing services. Bihi, what's your thought on this?
Well, I think my sister Yusra again said
Okay.
great things about it, but what I would
Yeah.
like to add to is just to resonate what Yusra said, is that our programs that already exist, some of them.
Yes.
There's a program called Target Market that targets minorities in terms of contracting, but who knows about it?
Yes.
See, you could have resources there, whether it's a meager or small resources, but if you don't share with the communities that it was supposed to help or engage, and if they don't know about it, that number one is education about existing resources for the city. Number two, my goal would be to remove the barriers Yusuf talked about. Yes, all those Somali or East African or immigrant people I know, business owners I know, depend on each other for loans, depend on because of culture and sometimes religious obligations that would not let them get the resources that are there because of the interest rate. So we need to actually innovate our system to, if we are honest enough to engage everyone in our city, to create equity, equal access to resources, we need to put culture and faith in there. We have to understand that Muslim business owners are not being engaged, are not being given a chance on the table. The loans that are available are not compliant with their faith. And I think that's very important, not because of their faith or somebody's faith, but because of the people who practice that faith need to access resources, and they're part of our city, and they are growing, and we need to notice that. We only notice them when we need votes in November. We need to go beyond November on that. The one thing I would like to add to that is space. For example, East Phillips has roof depot that the city is taken away from them, and that neighborhood is already suffering 4 times the asthma rate of the state, because there's a foundry, there's an asphalt factory, and now the roof depot, the city is not letting the community East Phillips buy it and have it, because their intention is to create urban farm, urban garden, to create organic food, to reduce the health crisis that was happening since 1960s, 50s. To really have a space for small immigrant businesses and BIPOC communities. Huge space, it's 7 acres. The building is so beautiful that the city wants to destroy it and create 500 traffic movement that will double the toxic environment for those families. I've talked to mothers who lost their sons to cancer and to asthma, and now our own, can you imagine that that neighborhood is part of the green zone? Can you see the hypocrisy? It's a part of the green zone, and we are doubling the level of pollution. They are suffering 4 times more than anywhere in our state. We need to give that space to the community. We need to get that back. We need to create business incubators where all the programs we are talking about to educate the community, teach them financial literacy, create compliant financial loans to those Muslim or other faiths that really work with that. We need to bring people together and teach our business owners and engage them to have a space for them where they can access a library. I know former business people.
Yes.
I know the Kolstad. That's his idea, who told me when I was engaging him. He's been doing business for a long time, him and his family. We need to use their expertise to create the space for them to teach our communities and give them the tool that they use to become successful. The other part I would like to add is we are a community of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And I don't know if you have noticed it, if you go to Somali malls,
Yes.
90 or 89% are female.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't know that quality of our women being the business leaders of our community, whether it's business stalls at the Somali mall or mid-sized companies, small business companies that sometimes employ 100 to 900 people. The other aspect of business is we need to increase the money we put in CDL programs that we have done before, because a lot of our women with hijab and men drive and operate and own 18-wheelers that bring food and all the material we use across the country. So there are many aspects of it, and I would like to take more time on that, but maybe next time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for covering most of them. So this is my most important question that the community want to know about your efforts on it, and what is your thought on health insurance, housing, education, and career plans do you have to develop for them? Very important one.
Well, that's a lot of
Yes.
that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
I think I did touch a little bit of the health.
Yes.
We do need to make sure we're taking care of our youth that are struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other two things that you mentioned? I'm sorry.
You know, housing.
Housing.
Think, yeah. And,
Yes.
The career.
The career. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Housing. Here's one thing that I'm different from other candidates.
Yes.
When I look into it,
Mm-hmm.
we cannot be stuck living in low-income housing.
Okay.
And we lived in this country close to 30 years.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Our community have done a lot of great things.
That's right.
You know,
Achievement.
we have a middle-class Somali community in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to make sure that we are tapping the home ownership program.
Yes.
Right? The high-rise building we're living and all that, it's great. It's wonderful. But where do we go from there?
Yes.
You know what I mean? When I got there, one of the first things I talk about as having a housing background was tenant rights and home ownership education.
Okay.
I put money right there when there wasn't no money. The city budget was decided already by the time I got there.
Yes.
But I was able to put money behind home ownership classes
Mm-hmm.
for families to know basics of buying a home.
Yes.
Right? Some families are paying a lot of money than if they were paying mortgage. Right?
Yes.
So that mentality has to live within us, right? We have to be homeowners. We have to move forward. We have to have our kids a backyard place they can live in.
Yes.
We cannot continue having abuses from the landlords and nasty letters they send out. It's time for us to kind of be part of the society we live in. You know, I say, you know, unpack yourself, right? This is your country. Your kids know this is all the country they know.
Yeah.
So housing is very important, and I say we have to put more resource home ownership education.
Yes.
Different way of buying homes easier for the communities, and put money through where the individuals and the organizations they trust from our community. That's one of the, and also build more housing. You know, I think this year the ARP money we had like $38 million that go to deal with homelessness and housing and rent assistance and so on. Those are the things that we need to continue pushing on housing.
Jamal, to listening to you on that part, I love the idea. Just a little bit, could you tell me, when you're involving yourself by supporting the community to get off their comfort zone and doing something different, what interest part? You know, the entire community is Muslim, and some of them are afraid to involve into interests which are Islamically, Bihi has brought that information. What part would you be able to help in that case?
Yeah, I think that this is the time we need with Adila in the masjid to get out the masjid and be part of the process that we're doing it, right? Okay. You know, the state level or the city level, the lawmakers, we need to make sure that say, hey, this is one of the things that keep us away from buying a home,
Yes.
right? What can you do about it?
Yeah.
And bringing those resources
Good.
and the banks that really offer
Yes.
halal way of
Way
doing
of
things,
buying,
right?
yeah.
Right. One of the examples that I would use that when you come together as a community,
That's
trying
right.
to tackle issue, we can't just be complaining all the time.
Yes.
We have to find a solution, right? One of the things that I'm working on right now is having the prayer to call all Minneapolis, and that, there's a laws that that can really make that happen, right?
That's right.
I look at the thing. I'm not approaching this as a religious way. I'm approaching this as an audience, a nose audience type of thing.
Yeah.
3 minutes prayer to call all Minneapolis.
Yes.
We hear the bells ring in church,
Yes.
but also the masjid here. It's something we can. So it comes down to technical. How do we address those things in a way that works for us,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think the mosque. And I say personal responsibility and community responsibility.
Yes, it's
When
so
when I'm talking about youth being out there, I'm not talking about blaming the parents.
That's right.
I'm talking about community stepping up and doing their part.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We have John and Smith coming helping your kids every day
Yeah.
while you are at the coffee shop. That is not responsibility. We have to take that next step
It's
and
definitely-
make sure that we are taking care of our
Yeah.
community. And as elected officials, is to find every resource and
That's
bring
right.
those resources. I want to, what I want to see the Riverside. I want to see like uptown. It has to be something
Upscale.
right?
Yes.
Right. One of the things that I was working right now with, even though it's not my word, is to make sure Carmel, like Blissbury area,
That's
that
right.
Carmel, that route,
Yeah.
bring like outside seating. Somalis love to talk and conversation.
Yeah.
Why not make this place? And I think Yusra have visited there with me at that time. Bring in more like a welcoming environment for
Yes.
us. We have to be part of the society, and that takes leadership. That takes cooperation, and also
Yes.
takes responsibility with all community members.
But the reason why I asked that question is that the roles that you're playing for us in the office. We have no power to be part of the office, and for me to bring that up is like, when you're considering these changes, does it involve our beliefs, our culture, our living lifestyle that that are very important to majority of our community, that you are playing the role for us? Does that make sense? So that's why I asked that. So, but great answer. Yusra, tell me a little bit about what do you think about?
Yeah, so it was housing, what was the other
Health.
one?
And
Healthcare.
yes, and education,
And education,
career.
pathways.
Yeah.
Okay, so housing, I think I've touched on it a bit earlier,
Yes.
and so did both Vicky and Jamal.
Yeah.
There was the finance department did look into creating loans that were zero interest.
Okay.
And what they would do is, instead of those increments of how interest works,
Yes.
it's like rocket science. I have no clue
Yes.
how riba works. I'm sorry, I cannot get a definite answer from anybody.
Yeah.
Like, is it? It's not black and white. There's so
Yes.
many. I don't
It
get
plays
it.
a role.
I just don't quite comprehend it.
That's right.
So what they did was they were just going to add a lump sum to it up front, just to take away that 0 point whatever percentage.
Yes.
And I left the city, so I'm not quite sure where that's at.
Okay.
And our former CFO is not there anymore. He became a city coordinator,
Yeah.
who Mark Ruffalo was a big fond of. He was a great guy. And it was him who actually engaged the community, was asking us, if we did this and that, would that actually work for the community?
Yes.
Because we're the only community that barely takes any loans from the city.
Yes.
At all. Whether it's business, whether it's home ownership,
Yeah.
whatever it is, we just do not do it.
Yeah.
And that is a main reason for why. And I'm encouraged because I see a lot of people buying homes now. And my goal, like I said earlier, is for you to have an upward prosperity, right? How do you achieve the American dream? And that is, moving up in life, buying a home, so forth and so on, building income for your family.
Yeah.
But most of us, we built homes back home that
Yes.
we're never going to live in. Our children are never going to live
Yes.
in. And I don't know why, but that's what we do. We prioritize that more than buying a home right here. In terms of healthcare, in what way? Is it just single payer healthcare? Like what do you mean by health in general? Was it the
insurance.
opioid and
No,
that
just,
aspect of it?
how easy access healthcare for our community. There are people who make money, they can buy their insurances. There are those who are vulnerable, they cannot.
Okay.
So what are
yeah,
the options?
yeah. So as a state, we're very lucky to live
Yes.
here, right?
Okay.
For me, I suffer from a chronic autoimmune disorder, so I know firsthand the importance of having health care, right? And unfortunately, in America, if you're the group that falls in between. You're not below the poverty line, but you're also not middle income. That group gets impacted the most, and that's where I fell into. We can't afford our own premiums on insurance. So it forced me to actually leave my job so that I can seek treatment, and no one deserves that, right? We have Minshore, and Minshore is a great marketplace where, you know, depending on your income, it will give you a premium that you can then buy that is good for you. But we can do more awareness in terms of that. Most of us get medical assistance, thankfully, because we live in a state that actually gives insurance to people who can't afford it. So in that way, it's good. But we also need to look into what is our biggest issue in terms of health. COVID was one thing, but we had so many good organizations. We had local clinics, like, is it called Brivia?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Helps with the insurance.
Yes, they help people enroll.
That they do that as well.
Yes.
They were also helping out in terms of making sure that people got vaccinated, that they had awareness. So we have good organizations. What we don't have are treatment centers and detox centers and methadone clinics and clinics like that that help with this uptick in opioid intakes and fentanyl, right? That is what we don't have. We don't have any culturally appropriate treatment center. We have one, which I'm very proud of, Alliance.
Alliance.
And may Allah reward him for the work that he does.
But one is not enough.
It's always full.
And it is.
It's
because
always full.
I grew up in South Minneapolis. I can tell you, I have friends, unfortunately, who are currently battling addiction. I have friends who will never see the light of day who are in jail. And I have friends who unfortunately lost their life to gun violence. And others who are deported are stuck in a country that they know nothing about. It's very unfortunate, but it's the story of being black in America, right? But the biggest issue right now that we have is the opioid crisis. It's the fentanyl in our streets and the lack of understanding of what this means, recognizing symptoms, how do we get in front of it. Parents don't even really converse with their children, so how would you even know if your son or daughter is acting different, right? How can you recognize what the symptoms are? How do you recognize somebody's under the influence? And then let's not shame them into not seeking treatment. Let's actually celebrate individuals who are willing to step up and actually seek treatment and stay clean. That is addiction. The thing is, I wish people understand how big addiction was. It's not something, it's not like, oh, mutual chew. You can't. You literally can't.
That's true.
People need to understand how powerful withdrawals are. They literally, people think that they're dying. Therefore, as a human being, you're going to be like, okay, I'll withdraw another day, so I'm going to go and get it and stop this feeling. So until we truly understand how enormous addiction is and how it can take control of you totally, we will never understand why these individuals are in where they are at, right? So I do think we need to promote the idea of getting clean. Now there's Nia, and I know Farhi Budu. I grew up with her. She's a good friend of mine, and I am so amazed at the work that she does and how brave she is to step up and actually own it, because that is our biggest fear. To be talked about, to be shamed. How's this going to impact my mom? How's this going to impact my dad? Like, I'd rather just be in this position than coming out and saying, you know what, I need help. Right? Yeah.
I think you covered such a great topic, but also what I believe in is that, you know, we need a lot of health counseling. And I think that's the biggest thing we're missing, where people can feel to come there, talk about, you know, talk to someone, even if they can't share this with their family. They have a clinic they can go to and share their thoughts on that, and you know, feel okay to say it, and then get the services they need from there. And that's what we're missing. We see someone who is going through drastic situation, and we're just like, okay, you know, go to Alliance and you will get help.
Or pray.
Or
they'll ask you pray.
We're finding this just
I used to be told when I was in treatment, oh, don't take these medications, just pray, it will go away.
So it plays
those are the
prayer is
things.
good.
Yes.
And I'm not refusing that.
Yes.
But you also need to be practical and seek treatment.
And those things are the things that I see every day. Young people suffering about opioids, fentanyl. And before you think you know what they're using, there's a new one.
Absolutely.
There's a new one.
Absolutely.
There's
the
another new
there's
one.
This, there's that.
More deadlier. the thing is that's missing is that we need to invest in our community clinics
Yes.
that seem to be in every community.
Yeah.
I've been on the board a long time ago, and I still do some work with a community clinic in Cedar Riverside called People Center.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have expanded from small clinic and a vet to full-blown clinic.
Yeah.
That now that's mental health and dental.
Yeah.
But if we need to put the resources in those community clinics around our ward and the city
Yeah.
to really, one big component that they use is the outreach part. That they reach out to the community, that they hire someone that does the flyers, talk to people, do the videos. They also reach out to the mosques and community centers. That's the model we need to encourage in our city.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be a certain group. It's for everyone.
You know what's unfortunate? I hate to interrupt you, but a couple of years back, do you remember those meetings we used to hold at the Opportunity Center where we brought in the mothers group and the youth and we talked about it? Yeah, I hate it because it kind of all fell apart because people were excited about it in the beginning and then it all just fell apart because politics and self-interest and things got in the way. But I remember we brought in leaders of like 12 mosques across the street. There was like 22 prominent faith leaders who came, and the youth were outside, right? They all banged the door, Burhan and all of them, and Mustafa. They banged the door, they came in, they sat down, they were really angry in the beginning, but they came down eventually, and the ulama allowed the youth to explain why we are where we are. And something still stayed with me because one of them said there was I think a Christian, a faith group that rented a space on Ucedar top that had a TV.
It was the tobacco shop.
And it was somewhere that they can congregate and hang out and get away from the elements and watch TV, watch games. And what he said was, that's not even from a Muslim. That was a Christian faith group that did that. But you guys have 40 mosques that are vacant, right? Literally, he was being brutally honest.
Youth homelessness and
and you guys couldn't even, he said, if I come into the mosque with my hair, they judge me based on my hair and I get ostracized and kicked out. Why can't you guys, you have so many rooms and so many spaces, instead of building brand new mosque every single day that nobody's going to pray in, help us out. Don't kick out the homeless kid who's in the mosque. Open treatment center, open a place where kids can hang out and play pool, and so you can attract them, even if you wanted to attract them. And that still stayed with me because it is so true. We collect money every single day for a special interest mosque. Well, I don't want to pray at so-and-so's mosque, so I'm going to make my own. But I don't give a damn about the youth or how this is impacting. So let's be honest, the resources are there within our community. We just don't really... We don't prioritize it.
Yes, thank you very much. And I was saying is that there are sometimes resources sitting there that are doing a wonderful job. But somehow there is this bad karma that any resource that starts to reach out to the community and that's impact on the community. And suddenly the community is showing up to use that. In a few years we see the reversal of funding.
We're fighting each other.
There's no funding. But talking about health, it's a matter of doing preventive, investing in preventive medicine, preventive education. A lot of our community members are dying because of heart diseases. So in Somalia, of course, the meager or scarce resource of healthcare, those who were able to have something in their community or city, it was just for getting sick and taken care of, but there was no preventive medicine. Here we have preventive medicine, where we need people to get themselves checked every 6 months, while they're healthy. You know, there's a colon cancer, there's breast cancer, there are so many things that we need to really nip the problem before it gets bigger. And that's where we need to put more resources in order to create a more healthy population in the future in every community. When it comes to career, let me talk about education. If a kid is hungry, if a kid is malnourished, if a kid is emotionally fragile and doesn't know what group to belong to because he doesn't have any positive belonging in his community, that kid's future education is almost nil. He's got a future somewhere else. not in education, not contributing to our society, but becoming a burden to us. So we have to start investing in youth programs to make sure that the young people who don't have a mother or a father that speaks English, or he or herself knows calculus, but needs help, there must be a center in their community where they can go. There are millions of volunteers or people. This is a great, amazing communities. People volunteer and contribute. People come to real work, but we need to support the infrastructure in our communities with dollars and funding, so we can create those safe spaces for our young people to emotionally nurture and grow while their parents are working 3-4 different jobs. In terms of career, I've worked with organizations that had resources to recruit from our communities to make a career for themselves. One of them is Somali Academy. Another one that I've worked for the past several years up to now is Emerge Community Development. They have an office in Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center. By the way, that center, I want to thank former City Council member Abdi Warsame and all the Peter McLaughlin and all the other leaders who put really efforts on the Cedar Riverside Coalition, including Augsburg and everyone, and the community members who really put that building together. We have a library, Hennepin County Library, we have Emerge Community Development, we have City of Minneapolis, we have got Minneapolis College. All these resources are one place. So I work with those organizations. We have trained so many people in construction, in electrician, into highway equipment operators, into nurses, into community outreach people, into machinists, forklift drivers. Right now, if you look at the numbers, a person with a college degree makes less money than a person with a vocational skills. I know people I took off the street with a gun and a gangbanger or something like that, or not, that I recruit from the street, put them in Summit School, Summit Academy, or Emerge programs, that now own their own home and have their own construction firm, and others who make $80 an hour. I know someone who lived in my neighborhood that was working in a security guard as $11.15 an hour. They took IT programs we brought there for 3 months. Now, the first job he started at Fairview is $78,000. Careers, free trainings, we need those programs, and we need to invest in those programs. In our community, we push our kids to become doctors and lawyers and finish college. There are alternatives. If the kid doesn't want to finish college, there are kids who love to work in IT. There are kids who love to draw and do arts. There are kids, because we have to look at our children and the passion they have, and in what way we can nourish them academically to see how they can become sustainable and contribute to our society in the future. So I think we need to look holistically at the system, not what the system wanted us for years to be, but what we want us and what we want to accomplish and how we're going to accomplish. That's the voice I want to take to City Hall.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think you guys are going to play a great role in our community. What do you think, Valerie? You guys have captured most of the things, and I think we're hoping for the best. And you know, the people that are watching, they're going to look at what really impacts them and what they need and who's going to make those changes. So it is great honor. We're coming to the end to have these amazing candidates that are going to be doing great services. Your election matters. So good evening. Have a great day.